Hey guys, tonight we drift into the flickering shadows of another world. The Tigris flows slow and heavy nearby, swollen from spring rains. You can hear it gurgling just beyond the date palms, where oxen grunt and farmers bend under bulging baskets of barley. Clay bricks warm in the sun as merchants haggle under reed awnings, and somewhere in the city, a scribe scrawls a tablet with stylus and sigh. It's all soothing enough until you realize something. You probably wouldn't survive a day here. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the muck. Well, sort of. It's 1888, and London's East End is a stew of smoke, spit, and something you'd rather not step in. The hem of your dress is already soaked. Not with water, mind you. Whatever's leaking from the fishmonger's gutter won't dry easy. You tug your shawl tighter and push open the door to a house marked only by a red lamp hanging crookedly in the mist. Inside, it's dim but warmer. The air thick with the clashing smells of lamp oil, cheap lavender, and old gin. The velvet curtain by the front door is moth-bitten, but it still sways with a dramatic flourish when you enter, more for effect than function. You cross the parlor slowly, your boots still sticky from the cobbles, and pass by two girls laughing softly on a fainting couch that has clearly fainted more than its fair share. The house is alive with murmurs and muffled footfalls. A floorboard creaks overhead. You know that sound. It means someone's still working, even though it's past first bell. The madam will note it, you're sure. Victorian brothels aren't all champagne and scandalous poetry. This one is a rented Georgian relic, its former grandeur long buried under layers of soot, sighs, and spit-polished desperation. The wallpaper peels like old skin. The chandelier? Just a dusty ring of glass teeth dangling from a hook someone hammered back in 1843. Your room is second floor, third on the left. It's cold, unless you keep the fireplace lit with whatever you can scavenge. Sometimes a bit of coal, sometimes a chair leg someone found. There's a wash basin, a cracked mirror, and a small table with one drawer that sticks no matter how you pull it. Inside, you keep exactly two secrets and one half-empty bottle of perfume. Mesopotamian households, by the way, weren't so different. Clay houses often had multiple small rooms centered around an inner courtyard, with privacy not being the luxury it is now. Your room here might feel more enclosed, but in Nineveh or your whole family might have slept in one chamber, grandma included. Back in your own house, you hear the front bell ring. That's the signal, a client. You freeze, not in fear, just calculation. Is it your turn? Is it his second time tonight? Did he bring coin or IOUs? A moment later, a different girl descends the stairs, all smiles and slippers, as if she were greeting a gentleman caller and not a grocer with garlic on his breath and calluses the size of oysters. You sigh. Not tonight, then. You retreat upstairs to your room and unlatch the window. Cold London air wafts in, soft and sour. From here, you see the lamplighter making his rounds. It's a romantic image, ruined only by the fact that your stomach's empty and your ribs ache from last week's fall. Stairs, not fists. That time, There's a scholarly debate over whether Mesopotamian entertainers were mostly temple-bound or part of the tavern culture. Some scholars say they served religious functions. Others say they served drinks and flirted over beer. In both cases, survival often meant smiling through it. You wipe a smudge off the window pane with your sleeve and spot two figures in top hats near the alley. Inspectors, maybe, or worse, the kind that prey on girls who wander outside alone. Downstairs, someone coughs. A real, chest-deep cough. The kind that ends careers. You've heard it before. You know what it means. You lean back in your chair and let your mind drift. Maybe somewhere else you're not here. Maybe you're a baker's wife, or maybe you live in Babylon, pouring date wine for traveling scribes, whispering riddles you half remember. The air smells like dust and incense, and you sleep on a woven mat under a fig tree. But tonight, you'll sleep in a room with paper-thin walls and one stubborn rat. You'll dream of rivers that don't stink and gaslights that don't flicker out just when you need them most. One floorboard creaks, someone laughs. The night begins again. The stair groans under your heel as you make your way back down, careful to avoid the third step. It shrieks like a gull and always wakes whoever's passed out in the chair by the hearth. Down here, the parlor's different after dark. The candles are lit now, pooling buttery light onto red drapes and discolored upholstery. It's warm, too warm, and smells of mulled wine left on a warmer too long. You glance toward the corner where the gas wall sconce hisses softly like it's trying to tell you something secret. This is the house you live in. Not just pass through. You sleep here, eat here, when there's stew. You cry in the bath and laugh in the hallway. And sometimes you lean against a door and listen to someone breathing on the other side. There's a comfort in that, even if it's a borrowed kind. The townhouse itself was probably lovely once. The crown molding still shows its original detail, if you look past the dust and the nail scratches. The floor was once marble tiled in the entryway, but now it's covered in a mismatched rug that curls up at one corner, like it gave up long ago. The ceiling leaks near the back window, so the madam hung a picture there to hide the stain. It's crooked. Always has been. Your room upstairs may be cold and peeling, but it's yours. At least until someone pays more and wants to stay longer. Then it's hers, and you get the cot in the attic. You keep everything you own in a carved wooden box, a ribbon, a chipped comb, and a letter you wrote to no one in particular. There's no lock on the door, but you wedge a sliver of iron under the knob at night, just in case. In ancient Mesopotamia, the home was a sacred space. People buried protective figurines in the threshold to ward off evil. You, too, tuck something under the floorboard, a charm from another girl who left last winter. Said it was for luck. You're not superstitious, but you haven't moved it. The kitchen is at the back of the house, near the coal room. The madam's niece sometimes cooks, but mostly it's bread and dripping, or boiled onions. Once, there was roast chicken. It smelled so good, it made you cry. Not because of the onions this time. There's a small garden out Doak. More a patch of weeds than a garden, but a few straggling herbs grow there. Mint, parsley, something that might be sage or just very ambitious moss. One of the girls, Maggie, swears she talks to it. You believe her. She's the only one who hasn't gone hoarse from the air inside this place. Upstairs, the halls are too narrow and the doors too close together. You can hear everything: water in the pitcher, whispered arguments, sobs stifled in sleeves. Once, you heard laughter that sounded too real for this place. You never figured out where it came from. Probably Maggie again. Victorian brothels were rarely the opulent parlors of fiction. Most were cramped, rented houses in back alleys or above taverns, hastily converted and poorly managed. Sanitation was minimal, privacy non-existent, and plumbing, when present, was often shared by more than a dozen people. You learn to take shallow breaths. There's a bath, but only on Sundays. Cold, metal, and shared. You draw straws for who gets first water. The water turns gray fast. You start your day at the hearth, not to warm yourself, but to see who's still here. Sometimes you find a stranger still sleeping there, a man who forgot to leave. Sometimes a girl didn't come back. You don't ask questions, not unless you really want the answer. You polish the brass doorknobs each morning, not for guests, for the madam. She likes them shining, says it makes the place feel proper, as if any of this could be. Historians still argue whether Victorian brothels were entirely exploitative or served, at times, as strange havens for women with few choices. Some women preferred this life to factory work or domestic service, which were brutal in their own right. That doesn't make it a fair trade, just a different cage. In your house, you learn to listen. Footsteps on the stairs mean everything. You learn the weight of them. A man in boots means money. A man in slippers means trouble. A woman walking slowly in silence means something has gone very wrong. In the parlor, the girls wait in a kind of rotating stillness. They don't make eye contact unless they mean to. They sip tea slowly, not because it's good, but because it gives their hands something to do. You sometimes help with the books, not that they're real. The madam keeps two ledgers, one for visitors, one for favors. You try not to ask what happens when the two don't line up. It's not your job. Yours is to smile when summoned, not speak unless spoken to. And remember which regular prefers peppermint on the sheets. And still, somehow, this house feels safer than the street. Out there is something worse: anonymity, cold eyes, and cold cobbles. In here, at least the walls remember your name. The madam has a voice like rustling silk and shoes that never seem to make a sound on the stairs. She appears behind you before you know she's coming, never out of breath, never out of place. Her perfume is violets and vinegar. You don't know her age. Could be 30, could be 60. Her hair is always pinned in a severe coil, not a strand out of place. The earrings she wears every day are shaped like tiny crescents, just enough to suggest wealth without inviting questions. Madam knows best, and she makes sure you know she knows best. She stands at the head of the parlor every afternoon, inspecting. The lace on your collar, the sheen on your shoes, the neatness of your hair. A smudge of ash or a hem an inch too high, and she's on you with a look. Not a word, just the look. You fix it before she says a thing. She doesn't yell. She doesn't have to. The last girl, she raised her voice that left 2 nights later with one shoe and a bruised wrist. No one talks about it, but everyone remembers. Some of the girls whisper that the madam was once a society wife, tossed aside after a scandal and left to make her own way. Others say she came from nothing and built this place up brick by broken brick. The truth is likely somewhere in between. Historians still argue whether Victorian brothel keepers were ex-workers themselves or simply savvy businesswomen profiting off desperation. In this house, it doesn't matter. She's in charge. Her rules are many, but spoken only once. You learn them fast. No clients upstairs unless invited. No money changes hands in the parlor. No blood on the sheets. Or if there is, change them before she sees. And above all, never, ever touch her gin. The madam keeps an account book with names, dates, and cryptic initials. You once saw a page and recognized half the names, not men you'd ever expect. One was a preacher, another a constable, another the husband of that widow who sells penny buns by the docks. Her records are precise. You suspect she could bring down half the borough with a single torn page. She never would, though. Power lies in the potential, not the act. In ancient Mesopotamia, women who worked in temples or taverns were under the authority of priestesses or powerful matrons. Some historians believe these women functioned much like madams, regulating behavior, arranging payments, protecting their own with sharp rules. There were even laws in Hammurabi's code governing the conduct and rights of these women, suggesting a structure that might feel oddly familiar to you now. The madam also controls the schedule. You don't decide when to rest or when to work. That's hers to decide. If she taps your door at midnight, you rise. If she says you get the night off, you rest, unless someone important arrives. Then your rest becomes someone else's profit. But she isn't cruel, not always. Once, when you burned your hand on the hot flat iron, she wrapped it gently and didn't dock your pay. Another time, she found a girl crying in the stairwell and simply sat beside her, quiet, until the tears stopped. She never said a word about it afterward. Sometimes, on slow evenings, she'll sit by the parlor fire with a book of poetry. Not to read aloud, never that, but to turn pages slowly and remind everyone she still could, if she wanted. The fire crackles, and she sips gin from a teacup with violets painted on the rim. The girls tiptoe around her. There's a strange loyalty here. You've seen girls threaten to leave, swear they're done. But by morning, they're still here. Something about the madam makes even the most bruised soul think twice about stepping into the cold world outside. It's not safety exactly, but it is structure, predictable, calculated, survivable. And it's not like there's many choices. You could try your luck as a maid, scrubbing chamber pots for a family that forgets your name. Or a factory girl, coughing up soot before 30. Or worse, a streetwalker with no door to lock behind you at all. Here, at least, there are candles and curtains. You once asked the madam why she does it, why she runs this place. She smiled, not kindly, and said, "Because I know what happens to girls who don't have someone watching." You believed her. Later, You saw her standing in the upstairs hallway, staring at an old photo in a cracked frame. Two girls in feathered hats. One looked a bit like her. The other looked like someone who had died too young. The madam never spoke of it, and so you follow her rules. You mind your manners. You keep your head down. Because in this house, survival doesn't come from defiance. It comes from quiet calculation and knowing when to disappear. Like her, you rise early, not because you want to, but because the walls begin their usual morning chorus, the coughing downstairs, the clatter of a chamber pot being emptied, the muttered curses of someone who stepped on that bent nail near the back door. Your back aches, your throat is dry, and the hem of your shift is twisted like it lost a fight with your legs in the night. Another day begins. You splash water from the chipped basin, the surface rippling with a gray shimmer. Cold, always cold. The mirror above it is cracked in 3 places. It never shows your face as a whole, only in fragments: cheek, brow, eye. Like someone trying to remember what you looked like before all this. Breakfast, if it happens, is tea and bread. If there's milk, it's sour. If there's jam, it's from someone else's ration. Still, you chew slowly, watching the fire flicker in the grate and thinking, not for the first time, about what a bakery smells like in the morning. You sweep the stairs, dust the mantel, polish the front knob so it shines in the gaslight. You don't do these things because you're told to. You do them because they keep your hands moving, and because the madam notices, always. A day in the life here isn't all lace and rouge. It's mostly waiting. Waiting to be called down. Waiting for someone to leave. Waiting for shoes to dry near the stove. Waiting for the ache in your chest to stop pulsing like a second heartbeat. You powder your face with chalk mixed with cornstarch, a trick Maggie swears by. You line your eyes with a coal stub when it hasn't rolled under the bed. You pinch your cheeks and smile at the mirror, not to see yourself, but to practice. In ancient Mesopotamia, women, especially those involved in temple service or tavern life, also had daily rituals: cleansing with river water, applying kohl, braiding hair. Beauty was both offering and armor. The same applies here. You check your stockings for runs, your boots for shine. And finally, you wait in the parlor, perched on a stiff settee that's seen more backsides than Buckingham's grand ballroom. Outside, the city churns. Horses clatter by, milk carts squeak, and someone hawks papers with a cry that's mostly swallowed by fog. The first caller arrives around noon. Always the same. Mr. Gregory, middle-aged, smells of cough drops and linseed oil. He barely speaks. Leaves a coin on the mantel like a priest leaving alms, then follows the girl he's chosen upstairs with the slow shuffle of a man walking to confession. You're not called today. So you polish silverware that no one uses. Help Maggie re-stitch a rip in her bodice. Make tea that tastes like boiled wool. Someone shouts down the hall. A slammed door. Then nothing. Afternoon fades into gaslight. The shadows crawl up the walls and settle in corners like sleepy cats. The second client is younger, smiles too much, talks about his wife, then forgets her name, leaves his gloves behind on purpose. Evening brings a different rhythm. The girls start to hum, whisper jokes, dab perfume on their wrists. You hum along. There's something about twilight that makes everything feel just bearable, like a velvet curtain pulled over the worst of the day. And then, your name. The madam calls it softly, as if inviting you to dinner instead of duty. You nod, smooth your skirts, stand. The man waiting isn't what you expect. Late 30s, well-dressed, not wealthy, but clean. He smiles politely and bows, as if this were a ballroom and not a brothel with leaky pipes. He doesn't stare. That's the odd part. He meets your eyes, and not in that calculating, hungry way most do. You lead him upstairs. The ritual begins. The water is poured. The boots are removed. The conversation, if any, is awkward and half-formed. You say what needs to be said. Nothing more. After, he hands you a folded piece of paper instead of coins. Says it's a poem. You smile, because what else do you do? Later, when he's gone, you unfold it in your lap and read, "You are not the sum of what is paid to see you." It's terrible poetry, but the thought is warm, like finding a single date cake among dry barley. Historians still debate whether Victorian sex workers formed lasting relationships with clients, or if such tenderness was fantasy in disguise. In truth, every rule has its exception, but exceptions never last long. You tuck the note in your box, the wooden one under your cot, next to the ribbon, the comb, the letter. It doesn't belong there, not really, but tonight it does. You end your day how it began, tired, aching, wrapped in silence. Outside, the fog thickens. The city holds its breath. Inside, you curl under a scratchy blanket and pretend not to hear the sounds through the wall. Someone laughs, someone sobs, and the house exhales. You dress slowly tonight, not because you're feeling elegant, because the corset laces are stiff with sweat and soap residue, and your fingers are already sore from sewing that tear in the lining. You tug at the ribbons, twisting toward the cracked mirror, teeth clenched, trying to find the balance between tight enough to please and loose enough to breathe. What you wear isn't really yours. The dress? Borrowed from the wardrobe the madam keeps under lock. The lace? Patched over and over until the original design is just a rumor. The shoes? Mismatched but close enough that no one notices in dim candlelight. Still, you try. Powdered face, darkened brows, lips tinted with beetroot juice, a dab of rose water behind your ears, though it can't quite hide the lie and sweat. You comb your hair into some semblance of softness, pinning stray strands with your last two good pins. There, ready for the stage. Victorian brothel attire, varied by house and client. But most working women wore clothes just good enough to imitate fashion. Silk was rare, but satin substitutes were everywhere. Stiff, shiny, and sewn to show more than they concealed. You'd be amazed how quickly a ripped hem gets restitched when there's coin at stake. Tonight's dress is a deep plum, faded at the edges, but still flattering. You catch yourself in the hallway mirror and allow a half smile. Not bad, not great, but good enough. Maggie sits on the edge of the tub, dabbing lemon juice on a stain. "Smells like hope and failure," she mutters, waving the rag. You both laugh. It's too late in the day for pretense. Smell here is everything. Rosewater, lavender oil, cheap perfume, old gin. A fog of it hangs in the air like incense. Sometimes you catch the scent of fresh pipe tobacco on a client, and for a second you're 8 years old again, watching your uncle read the paper. Then the moment fades. One girl always smells of oranges. No one knows how she gets them. Out of season and too expensive for the likes of you. She says nothing when asked, just smiles. You suspect it's her secret trade, some citrus for favor arrangement with the grocer 2 doors down. A fruit for silence. In Mesopotamia, perfumed oils were signs of status and allure. Women used them to anoint the body, the hair, even the soles of the feet. Some temple workers were known to carry scented pouches sewn into their garments, filled with crushed flowers or herbs. You try to imagine what the priests would have said if you'd walked into a ziggurat smelling of spoiled mutton and coal smoke. The client tonight is a return guest, which is both a blessing and a curse. Blessing, because you know his pace. Curse, because he likes to talk. He asks about your favorite flower. You say lilac. He says lilies. He asks where you're from. You lie. You always lie. Better to be from nowhere. Easier to disappear when the story ends. When he leaves, you're paid in coin. No poems tonight. The money is warm from his palm and damp with sweat. You don't care. It goes in the tin on the shelf. Half to the madam, half to you. None of it feels like yours. You change slowly afterward, wincing as you unlace the corset. Your ribs feel bruised. Your hips are sore. You pour a little of the rose water into your basin and dab it along your collarbone, just to feel like someone cared for you today, even if it's your own hand. There's a fringe theory among scholars that certain Mesopotamian priestesses were actually early healers or midwives, working within a ritual framework. Some think they used specific oils and fabrics as part of the healing performance. You wonder what they'd think of your rituals. Powder, corset, rouge, repeat. Downstairs, a girl is crying. Not loudly, but not hiding it either. You think it's Josie. She's only been here a month. Her mascara runs like ink in the rain. No one goes to her. Not yet. She needs to cry first. Later, you sit on your bed, wrapped in a shawl, trying to unknot the ribbon in your hair. The gaslight flickers. The wind presses against the window pane like a child asking to be let in. You think about clean sheets, a hot bath, fresh bread with butter, a laugh without tension. These aren't luxuries. They're just things you miss without knowing it. Historians still debate whether working girls of the era had any time for themselves, whether they found moments to read, to write, to simply be. Some left journals behind. One wrote poetry. Another scrawled recipes on the backs of unpaid bills. You once started a diary, 1 page. Then someone read it aloud in the parlor and you tore it up. Never again. But maybe you'll try again tomorrow. Tonight, the bell rings late, closer to midnight than usual, and with it comes that familiar hush. You glance up from your cup of watered gin. Everyone in the room freezes for just a second. You know this pause. You've lived this pause. It's the moment between who walks in and what they expect. The front door opens, and in steps a man dressed finer than most, top hat still on, gloves still buttoned. He carries the smell of a private carriage, cigars, wool, and something expensive you can't quite place. He doesn't look around. He already knows the house. That's worse somehow. You look away and hope the madam doesn't call your name. You're not in the mood for someone who walks like he owns the floor, but your name comes anyway. You paste on the smile, the one you learned to perfect in the mirror between bruises and boredom. You smooth your dress and step forward. This one asks for the special room. You flinch slightly, not because it's unfamiliar, but because it means a different set of rules. The room at the end of the hall, with the deep red drapes and the mirror on the ceiling. Yes, that one. He follows you up, saying nothing, just the sound of his polished boots on wood. That rhythm, slow, measured, makes your shoulder blades tense. You unlock the door. The room's already been prepared. Fresh candles, sheet change, decanter refilled. You wonder briefly who did it. Probably Josie. She's been getting the odd jobs lately. You owe her one. The man speaks finally. A whisper, a request. One you've heard before. Nothing violent, just strange. Victorian brothel clients were a catalog of contradictions. Some wanted dominance. Others, obedience. Many simply wanted to talk to someone who wouldn't laugh when they cried. The special room exists for those who pay extra for a story they can believe in for an hour. You oblige. You've done this enough that it's a performance now, like temple actors in Mesopotamia who reenacted myths before gods and kings. Some scholars believe those ceremonies were as much catharsis for the audience as devotion for the divine. This feels the same, except the god is money, and the myth is that any of this is love. After, he pays in silence. Leaves quickly. His gloves stay on. That's always how you know which ones are pretending to be invisible. You don't stay in the room long after he leaves. You strip the sheets, throw them in the bin downstairs, and scrub your hands with lye until they're raw. It doesn't help. You can still smell him. Downstairs, Maggie is nodding off with her head against the wall. Her shoes are off, and she's mumbling something about cheese pies. You smile, even if it doesn't reach your eyes. You sit beside her and take the weight off your feet. They throb. You think about what your mother would say, if she knew, if she's even alive. You haven't heard anything in years. In Mesopotamia, the goddess Inanna was associated with both love and war. One of her temple hymns describes her as she who walks into battle with sweetness on her lips. You think about that line as you watch the candle sputter low. It fits. You've learned that same trick, being soft when needed, sharp when required. The house feels quiet now, but not peaceful. Just waiting. That kind of waiting that hums through the floorboards. You stretch your legs and let your head rest back against the wall, where the plaster flakes a little under your hair. It's nearly 2 in the morning when the last client leaves. The front door shuts softly behind him, and you hear the madam turn the bolt. That's the real end of the day, not the closing of your eyes, but the click of that lock. You rise, slowly. Every joint protests. You shuffle to the kitchen and pour a bit of water. It tastes metallic and warm. Still, it's something. You think of ancient women, sweeping temple floors, lighting lamps for absent gods, whispering prayers that might never be heard. You understand that kind of hope now, not loud, not desperate, just a steady thing that refuses to leave. Upstairs, the hallway smells of lavender and smoke. You pass the mirror again and glance sideways. The face looking back is someone you know too well and not at all. You nod to her anyway. Back in your room, you peel off your corset, one loop at a time, sighing with every inch of release. The bruises around your ribs are faint now, like the memory of a storm. You lie down. Blanket scratchy, pillow flat. But it's yours for tonight. The rat in the corner doesn't move. Even it seems tired. The candle burns low on the sill. You blow it out. The dark doesn't scare you anymore. The rules aren't written down anywhere. You don't get a pamphlet on your first day. But they're there, etched into the walls, whispered between bed sheets, reinforced by raised eyebrows and sudden silences. In this house, you learn fast, or you leave faster. The first rule, no kissing. Not on the mouth, not on the forehead, not even the hand. Unless the client's paid triple. And even then, it's more theatrical than tender. Kissing is personal, dangerous, a shortcut to mistakes. The second rule, don't fall asleep. Not with a man, not on shift, not in the parlor. Sleep makes you vulnerable, and vulnerability is a luxury you stopped affording 2 corsets ago. The third rule, don't steal. Not from each other, not from clients, not even from the biscuit tin. The madam keeps tabs. She knows exactly how many crumbling ginger biscuits are in that tin, and she'll know if one vanishes. She always knows. There are more, of course. Rules that change based on who's watching. No talking to constables unless spoken to. No staying out past moonrise. No crying in the stairwell where the guests can hear. No humming. Unless it's market day and everyone's too busy to care. These rules become muscle memory. You don't think about them anymore, just like you don't think about breathing. They just are. One night, Josie forgets the first rule. A new client, young, handsome in a careless way, leans in and kisses her softly on the lips before she has time to dodge. She doesn't push him away. Maybe she thinks it's sweet. Maybe she just freezes. No one knows. The madam does, though. Somehow. By morning, Josie's room is empty. Her things gone. The bed made, the pillow fluffed. No one talks about it. But the rule's been refreshed in everyone's memory. In ancient Mesopotamia, temple workers were bound by sacred codes, many of them unspoken, passed down through generations. Scholars say there were rituals for purity, service, silence. One fringe theory suggests some rules existed purely to separate ritual intimacy from daily affection, to preserve emotional distance. You understand that now. There's a different kind of rule for how you carry yourself. Walk slowly, but not lazily. Speak softly, but with control. Never correct a client. Never ask about their family, unless they bring it up. And even then, tread lightly. Be clever, but not too clever. Pretty, but not too proud. Mysterious, but always available. The rules are sometimes contradictory. That's the point. It keeps you guessing. keeps you off balance, keeps you from thinking you've figured it all out. You remember one girl, Sylvie, who used to write her own rules in a tiny notebook. She had rules like, don't trust a man who compliments your shoes before your smile, and never drink the second glass of wine if you didn't pour the first. She was funny like that, sharp. Gone now, of course. Left in the night, or taken. No one ever said. One day, you wake to find a new girl in the attic room. Pale, quiet, eyes wide like a rabbit that knows it's already been caught. She doesn't know the rules yet. You want to tell her, want to give her a head start. But the madam wouldn't like that. Best she learns the way you did, one mistake at a time. There are small rebellions, of course. You all find ways to push back, even if it's just once in a while. Maggie wears mismatched stockings on Sundays, just because. You sneak sugar cubes from the tea tray and hide them in your pillowcase. One girl swaps her perfume for ink, just to see who notices. Answer, no one, except the madam. You don't laugh about the rules often, but sometimes, in the late hours when the house finally goes still, you whisper jokes under your breath. Rule number 57, you mutter to Maggie one night. Never trust a man who brings his own pillow. She snorts into her wine. Historians still argue whether Victorian brothels were lawless or overregulated. Some claim the madams were tyrants, others that they offered stability in an otherwise feral world. Here, it feels like both. A delicate tyranny, a structured chaos. You've broken a few rules, small ones. Once you took a client's comb, a fine ivory piece he left on the dressing table. You still have it. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard under your bed. You stroke its teeth sometimes, not because it's useful, but because it feels like something you chose. And rules aren't just about behavior. There are unspoken rankings among the girls. Who gets the best rooms? Who gets the repeat clients? Who the madam calls dear and who she calls girl. You learn to navigate the hierarchy like a fish in muddy water. But rules, even these, have limits. Sometimes someone snaps, slaps a client, screams, smashes a bottle. The aftermath is silent. The madam appears. The girl disappears. No one asks. But that night, everyone walks a little straighter, speaks a little softer. You whisper to yourself the most important rule of all. Survive. No matter what else happens, keep breathing, keep standing, keep going. You can forget the rest, but never forget that one. Sometimes the men come in pairs, not for shared company, though that happens too, but to make each other brave. Two friends, staggering in from a tavern, laughing too loud, making too much of nothing. One's cocky, the other shy. They both reek of ale and mutton, and they both leave smelling faintly of rosewater and regret. You always know which one will try too hard, which one will tip badly, which one will apologize when he leaves. You've memorized the types. There's the bachelor, nervous, well-dressed, asking too many questions. There's the widower, slow-moving, quiet, leaving a glove behind. Then there's the gentleman, who wants to be called by a false name and pretends to be someone you've never heard of. You nod and play along. Sir, of course. Right away, sir. Tonight's a slow one. Rain taps against the windows, like a fussy guest too polite to knock. The fire in the parlor has gone to embers, and Maggie's trying to teach the new girl, Florence, how to hem a skirt without stabbing her thumb. Florence's hands tremble with every stitch. Poor thing. Her first week. She still says, "Pardon me," when someone bumps into her. You watch them in silence, feet tucked beneath you on the couch, sipping tea gone cold. There's comfort in the routine, in knowing the next hour, in the predictability of small things, like how the kettle always shrieks half a second before the madam yells for water. A cuneiform tablet discovered in Nippur lists daily tavern expenses, including payments for dancers, food, and bath water. It's strange how little has changed. Ancient girls likely sat around like this too, sorry-footed, sipping barley beer and waiting to be summoned. Florence looks up and asks, "Is it always like this?" You think about the bruises, the long nights, the empty mornings. You think about the laughter, the stolen sugar cubes, the private rituals that keep you sane. You shrug. Mostly. Later that night, you're called upstairs. Not by name, but by glance. The madam catches your eye and tilts her head. You know the signal. You smooth your skirt and follow the guest. He's talkative, wants to know your favorite book, your opinion on the new omnibus routes, whether you've ever visited the seaside. You answer politely, choosing words like cards from a marked deck, enough to sound real, never enough to invite intimacy. He asks if he can just lie beside you. You nod. He doesn't touch you, just talks. His wife died last year. He hasn't slept well since. He says you smell like a garden, and you bite your tongue to keep from laughing. When he leaves, he kisses your knuckles. Breaks rule number 1, but gently. You let him. Back downstairs, the house is still. Everyone's either asleep or pretending. You linger by the window, watching rainwater snake down the glass. You wonder where the man goes now. Home, maybe. Or to another woman who reminds him less of what he's lost. You think about loss a lot in this job. Not just yours, everyone's. Loss is the currency behind every door. They come here to forget something, someone, somewhere. You're just the placeholder between sorrow and sleep. Historians still argue whether brothel workers in the Victorian era internalized the grief of the men they served, or if they became desensitized entirely. In truth, it's a little of both. You listen, you absorb, and then you let it drain out of you like water through a sieve. You can't carry every story. There's no room. Back in your room, you reach under your bed and retrieve your little wooden box. You open it. The poem, the comb, a sugar cube wrapped in tissue, a ribbon. Tiny things. Insignificant to anyone else. But to you, they're reminders. Proof that you've lived days not entirely swallowed by duty. You add something new tonight, a pressed flower, from the vase in the hallway. A carnation, already browning at the edges. You flatten it inside your old letter. Maybe it'll keep. Maggie knocks softly on your door, then enters without waiting. She does that, always has. Tea? She asks, holding up 2 chipped mugs. You nod. She sits beside you. You both sip in silence, listening to the groan of pipes and the distant hum of rain. Florence is going to be all right, Maggie says eventually. She'll learn, you reply. Did we? She asks. You both laugh. The sound is soft, weary, like old friends clinking empty glasses and pretending it's champagne. The city outside never sleeps, only shifts tone. By day, it's all shrill whistles, iron wheels, and the scraping call of street hawkers. By night, it hums. A slow, breathy throb, a city sighing into its own shadow. And from the second floor window of the brothel, you can see everything. Chimney smoke curling against the navy sky, a constable's lamp bobbing in the fog, the silhouette of a dog nosing along the gutter for scraps. You're on laundry duty tonight. Not glamorous, but necessary. The back stairwell smells of damp linen and boiled soap. The basin out there leaks a bit, so you work with your skirts hiked and your ankles cold. Maggie helps, mostly humming, occasionally swearing when a corset string catches her finger. You wring water from someone's shift, might have been Josie's, hard to tell anymore, and hang it near the stove. The air is already warm with steam and the faint, coppery tang of old blood. Everything in this house smells like something else. Laundry is where truth comes out. Between suds and sour water, you hear things. Hushed confessions, quiet snickers, sometimes crying. When someone thinks you aren't listening, you always are. Florence joins you halfway through the pile. She doesn't speak, just kneels and starts folding. She's learning, quickly. That's how you survive here, not by being the prettiest or cleverest, but by adapting faster than your circumstances can change. You hand her a pair of stockings and say, heels to heels, toes to toes. She folds them correctly. You smile. Victorian brothels weren't run like fantasies. There were no velvet lounges or harp music. There were undercooked meals, sour bed sheets, and rooms so cold you sometimes saw your breath in winter. You worked, you cleaned, you repaired the lace on your bodice with fishing thread, if that's what you had. It was a job, a life, a performance you rehearsed daily until you forgot where the mask ended and your skin began. In ancient Mesopotamia, laundresses served not just temples, but taverns and houses of pleasure. They were respected in some circles, reviled in others. Their work was considered both purifying and polluting, depending on who was speaking. You think about that as you wring out a stained pillowcase and watch brownish water pool at your feet. Later that night, you're sent out for errands. Rare, but it happens. You take the basket and head into the foggy street with coins tucked into your bodice. Your boots click on cobbles slick with rain. You pass the butcher, who tips his hat, and the woman selling matches, who doesn't even glance up. You feel the cold differently out here. In the house, it's still, stale. Here, it moves, slides down your collar and between your shoulder blades like a whisper. You quicken your pace. At the grocer's, you buy what you're told: tea, cheap biscuits, vinegar, candles. And, because you know how to play the game, a single jar of plum preserves, something sweet to soften the morning. The shop boy gives you a look, not cruel, not kind, just aware. He knows what house you come from. Everyone does. You tuck the receipt into your basket and leave. On the walk back, you see a girl you don't recognize standing near a lamppost, hair pinned in a rush, skirt wet at the hem. You make eye contact for a second, just a flicker, and in it is a whole conversation. How long you been out? Too long. Got a room? Not tonight. You look away first. It's the rule. Historians still argue whether brothel workers shared kinship with their street counterparts or saw them as competition. In your experience, it's both. You pity her. You resent her. You were her once. You might be again. Back inside, the madam checks the basket, nods, says nothing. That's as close to praise as you'll get. You wipe your boots on the mat and hang your shawl to dry. Later, when the girls gather in the parlor, the plum preserves appear. Someone makes a joke about it being a royal supper. You all laugh and eat slowly, spoon by spoon. No one says it, but everyone's thinking the same thing. This tastes like something you used to have before everything changed. You catch Florence watching the fire, eyes glassy. You nudge her. First plum. She nods shyly. You smile. Welcome to the good life. You wake to a nosebleed. Not a dramatic one, just a thin trickle over your lip, warm and sour. You tilt your head back, press the heel of your hand to your nostril, and wait. This happens sometimes. Too much dust, too little sleep, or maybe just the dry air rising off the coal stove. You sit up slowly. The mattress creaks. You press a rag to your face and glance around the room. Gray light through thin curtains. A trail of mouse droppings near the corner. Your stocking slung carelessly over the chair. Another glamorous morning. The house isn't awake yet, but it will be soon. You hear a kettle lid rattle in the kitchen. The floor creaks. Someone heading for the privy. A cough, a sneeze. Then silence again. You wrap your shawl around your shoulders and step into the hallway, feet bare, cautious of the splinter that always catches your right heel near the stair. Downstairs, the madam is already at the front desk, ledger open, spectacles low on her nose. Her pen scratches with the rhythm of someone counting lives in ink. Your shift's moved, she says, without looking up. You're on evenings this week. You nod. That's all. That's always all. Back upstairs, you find Florence in the bathroom, staring at herself in the cracked mirror. Her face is blotchy. Her hair's a nest. She turns to you and says, "How do you stop being scared?" You shrug. You don't. But you don't look scared. You smile. Not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. That's the trick. There were no mirrors in most Mesopotamian brothels. At least, none that survive in the record. But clay tablets describe women preparing with oils, combs, and jewelry. Beauty was ritual. It still is. You take Florence's brush and untangle her hair, slow strokes, one knot at a time. You're not alone, you tell her quietly, but you'll feel like you are. She nods. The day rolls forward like wet laundry, heavy, slow, inevitable. You mend a skirt, burn your finger on the iron. Maggie reads aloud from a torn novel she found behind the stove. It's a detective story, absurd and overdramatic. Everyone loves it. That evening, the client who walks in is unfamiliar, but he walks like someone who thinks he's been here before. He asks for someone tall. You're tall enough, apparently. The madam nods toward you, and you rise from your place by the hearth. Upstairs, he talks too much, laughs at his own jokes. You smile when it's required. He touches your face like it's a surface he doesn't trust to be real. And then, suddenly, he cries. You freeze, not out of fear, but out of surprise. It's not common. but it's not unheard of. He says something about his mother, something about the war, something about a dog. The words don't matter. The tears do. You sit beside him on the edge of the bed and say nothing. Not because you're cold, but because anything you say would be too much. You let the silence do the work. It always does. When he leaves, he presses a coin into your palm and says, "Thank you." Like you've done him a kindness. You have, maybe, but not the one he thinks. Historians still debate whether brothel workers saw themselves as caregivers. Some did, some didn't. You don't see yourself as anything, really. You're a mirror, a vessel, a silence that fills the space where shame wants to live. That night, Florence comes to your room. She's pale, hands shaking. "I can't do it," she says. You offer her your cup of tea. Lukewarm, bitter. She sips it anyway. You tell her the truth. Not the full truth, just enough to hold on to. That the first month is the worst. That the second is better. That by the third, you'll forget at the names and just remember the patterns. And after that, she whispers. You shrug. You keep going, or you leave. Do many leave? Some, not as many as say they will. She curls up in the corner of your bed and pulls your shawl over her knees. You let her stay. She falls asleep quickly, breath soft and shallow. You stay awake a little longer. You write something down in your notebook, a rule of your own. Rule number 8, don't pretend it's not hard. Just make it look easier. You tuck it under your mattress and lie back. The wind outside has changed direction. You can feel it in the way the house breathes. It's colder now, wetter. Winter is coming. You pull the blanket up and let your eyes close. You've survived another day. The frost comes early this year. You notice it first in your fingers, stiff at the joints when you rise, reluctant to bend around the kettle handle. The second sign is the window, a lace of white ferns crawling across the glass like ghost vines. And the third, the girls start sleeping closer to the hearth. Even Maggie pulls her cot a foot nearer to the fireplace, pretending it's just for the light. You wear 2 shifts now, layered, and tuck hot bricks in your bedding when you can. The madam orders extra coal, but it's rationed. Not for the comfort of the girls, for the illusion of warmth when the guests arrive. Appearances, always. Still, cold has a way of peeling people open. The masks come off in winter. Manners freeze and crack. Clients arrive with red noses and raw tempers. One shouts at the madam over a misplaced glove. Another tries to kiss you without paying, and when you pull away, he calls you ungrateful. You grit your teeth, bow slightly, and excuse yourself, just long enough for Maggie to step in and take your place. You owe her, again. Downstairs, the parlor fills with the scent of must and damp velvet. The walls seem smaller. Sound echoes differently in the cold, sharper and thinner, like ice cracking over a pond. You boil water constantly, just to keep the air moist enough to breathe. You sew extra padding into your boots. You rub your hands with tallow at night to keep the skin from splitting. Florence gets chilblains, red swollen patches on her toes and fingers. You show her how to make a compress with vinegar and cloth. She hisses when it stings, then says thank you so softly you almost miss it. In ancient Mesopotamia, winters were milder than here, but even then, texts mention the long nights when the hearth must not die. Clay braziers were kept burning through dusk and dawn. It's comforting to know you're not the first to sit beside embers, whispering old songs to yourself just to stay sane. Tonight, a client comes in with frost still clinging to his mustache. He smells of horse and coal smoke, doesn't speak, doesn't undress, just sits on the bed and stares at the floor. You sit beside him and ask gently, "What would you like tonight?" He looks up, eyes rimmed with red. "Do you know how to pray?" That catches you off guard. You nod, slowly. "I can pretend." He smiles at that. Pretending's enough. So you close your eyes and murmur something soft, not a real prayer, not one you remember from childhood, but a string of kind syllables, like humming in a key no one else hears. He relaxes, just a little. Historians still argue whether prayer was part of brothel life. Some suggest it was used mockingly, others that it was a quiet rebellion, a way to claim grace in a place forgotten by it. You believe both. You've done both. The client doesn't touch you. He just listens. When he leaves, he places a dried flower on the windowsill. Back in the parlor, Maggie is roasting chestnuts over the fire. Not real ones. Parlor trick nuts, bitter and chewy, but they smell almost right. She offers you one. You accept. It burns your tongue a little. You don't mind. Florence has knitted herself a scarf. It's lumpy and uneven, but long enough to wrap twice. She's proud. You tell her it's beautiful. That's not a lie. That night, you dream of warmth, a real fire, a thick quilt, feet that don't ache, a morning that doesn't begin with cold breath and cracked knuckles. You wake before dawn, blanket tangled around your knees, the hearth dark. You add coal to the fire and strike the match. It flares, then dies. You try again and again. On the fourth strike, it catches. The fire flutters to life, and so does the day. Rain again. A slow, drumming kind, the sort that soaks you without you realizing, working its way into seams and bones. It drips from gutters, pools and alleyways, hisses on stovetops. The whole city is slick and sour, and the house smells faintly of wet wool and mildew. Everyone's skirts cling to their legs, and the parlor rugs squish underfoot. Rain means fewer guests. No one wants to stumble through the muck for company they can't brag about. So you all sit around and wait, curled on chairs like tired cats. Maggie darns socks. Josie plucks at her mandolin, absent-mindedly out of tune. Florence sketches something in the corner with charcoal on butcher's paper. Faces, maybe. Or clouds. The madam isn't in a good mood. Rain brings her headaches. She snaps at Josie to play quieter, then glares at the tea tin as if it's personally offended her. You all go still for a beat. Then Maggie whistles a single high-pitched note. So ridiculous, so perfectly awful, that it breaks the tension like a dropped plate. Everyone laughs. Even the madam's mouth twitches. You spend the afternoon cleaning again. Not because it's dirty, but because it's something to do. You polish brass that doesn't shine, rearrange flowers that are already dead. You light candles, not because you need the light, but because the flame makes the room feel alive. It reminds you of a passage from a clay tablet, a Mesopotamian household hymn that lists the daily rituals of temple women, sweeping the threshold, lighting the sacred lamps, oiling the door hinges. Everything was performance. Every task a kind of prayer. Florence approaches, holding out her sketch. "It's you," she says, blushing. You glance down. It's rough, mostly shadow and lines, but unmistakably your eyes. Tired, watchful, the hint of a smirk just at the corner. "It's better than I look," you tell her. "It's what you look like to me," she replies. You pin the drawing to the wall above your basin, next to a clipping from an old newspaper, and the dried carnation you pressed weeks ago. A private altar. No incense, no idols, just proof you exist. By evening, a client does arrive. He's tall, balding, wears a green cravat. He asks too many questions about your name, your family, your favorite fruit. You give him polite, fake answers. Mary, dead. Apples. He nods like it means something. He smells like bay rum and damp tweed, and he won't stop fidgeting. At one point, he asks if he may recite poetry to you. You agree, because poetry is easier than other things. It's dreadful. All rhymes and wounded metaphors. You smile anyway. His voice trembles at the end, and he bows like a failed actor leaving a cheap stage. He gives you a coin and a pressed handkerchief. You fold it neatly and keep it. Historians still debate the psychological effect of this work, whether women found detachment easier or if they developed a kind of dual self. One face for clients, another for themselves. You've learned to do both. You don't even notice the switch anymore. After he leaves, you wash your hands longer than necessary. You watch the water swirl in the basin, gray, tired, tinged with soap. Then you dry off and head downstairs. Maggie has made soup, real soup, with carrot, onion, maybe a scrap of meat if you squint. Everyone eats slowly, savoring every drop like it's a feast. Josie hums a lullaby. Florence sketches the edge of her bowl. Someone burps. You all laugh. You find a tiny moment of comfort in that scene. The low light, the clink of spoons, the steam rising from chipped bowls. It feels almost normal. You clean up after, wipe the counters, fold the linens, check the front door latch twice, just in case. Back in your room, you sit on the floor with your back against the bed frame. The rain has finally stopped. You can hear the last drops falling from the eaves. You write another rule in your notebook. Rule number 13. Let the quiet moments matter, even if they're borrowed. You stare at the page until the words blur. Then you close the book, climb under your blanket, and rest your head against the pillow. For once, you fall asleep without dreaming. There's a knock at the front door just after dusk. 2 short taps, 1 long. You freeze with a comb halfway through your hair. That knock isn't on the usual list. The madam answers herself, which is rare. You and the others watch from the parlor, pretending not to. The door opens just a crack. A voice you don't recognize mutters something low. The madam stiffens, says nothing, then steps aside to let him in. He's tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black coat with a collar high enough to shadow most of his face. No hat, no umbrella. Just soaked through, water dripping from his sleeves onto the rug. He surveys the room without moving his head, like someone trained to look for exits. Then softly, "Evening." The madam speaks quietly to him, not angry, not warm, just precise. Then she turns and beckons. Your name. Your stomach clenches. He doesn't look like trouble, exactly. But he looks like he's seen trouble. That's worse. You follow him upstairs, matching his pace, neither fast nor slow. His boots don't squeak, despite being soaked. You make note of that. Quiet boots always mean something. In the room, he removes his coat with slow deliberation, folds it, places it on the chair, sits on the bed, not looking at you. Do you know anything about Mesopotamia? He asks suddenly. You blink. A little. He nods. Ziggurats, rituals, the women who served the temples. They didn't get to choose, did they? You shake your head. Not often. Neither do we, he mutters. He stays like that for a while, silent, staring at the wall. Then, without touching you, he tells you a story about a boy who ran away from his village to be a soldier, about the friend he left behind, about all the things he's carried since. You say nothing, just listen. It's enough. When he finishes, he stands, hands you a coin. Then he says something you won't forget. Don't lose your first name. And he leaves. You sit in the stillness after. The bed untouched, the air heavy with a different kind of intimacy, one made of silence and shared breath. Downstairs, no one asks how it went, but Maggie catches your eye, raises an eyebrow. You shrug. Later that night, Florence finds you in the kitchen, boiling tea leaves for the third time. She asks you what he was like. You think for a moment. Tired, you say, but not dangerous. She nods. That's rare. And it is. Ancient Mesopotamian tablets sometimes mention men who visited temple priestesses not for pleasure, but for confession. The line between worship and sorrow is often blurred. Some scholars suggest the temples offered something between therapy and theater. You wonder if that's all this is in the end. You finish your tea, though it's mostly just hot water now. Then you write in your notebook again. Rule number 17. Some men come for your body, some for your silence. Know which is which. You return to your room. The sketch Florence gave you flutters slightly in the draft from the window. You pin it tighter. Your fingers ache from the cold. Your mind feels strangely quiet. Sleep comes slowly tonight, but when it does, it wraps around you like warm cloth, and you let yourself drift. Somewhere far off, you dream of ziggurats and names you still remember. Tonight begins with the smell of something burning. Not smoke exactly, more like scorched sugar. Josie left the kettle too long again. The base is blackened, and the tea tastes like rust. No one complains, though. It's warm, and that's good enough. The madam is in a fouler mood than usual. The rent is due, the chimney sweep hasn't shown, and a regular client was spotted stumbling drunk down the alley, ranting about filth behind velvet curtains. She's pacing now, tight-lipped, scribbling figures in her ledger with increasing pressure, as if the ink can solve anything. Tension stretches across the house like string about to snap. Florence suggests a game. Word circles, she says. You pick a word, then we go around saying something it reminds us of. You raise an eyebrow. What's the point? To stay sane, she replies. You play. The word is water. Someone says tea, another says bath. Florence says river. You say flood. Maggie mutters, whiskey, and everyone chuckles. It isn't much, but the tension breaks. The house breathes again. Then the bell rings. It's not a new client. It's him again, the one from last night. Black coat, quiet steps, that strange, half-haunted air. The madam says nothing this time, just nods toward you. Upstairs, he removes his coat like before, but this time he sits at the edge of the bed without speaking. Minutes pass. Finally, may I ask your name? You hesitate. That question isn't usually allowed, but he's already answered it himself. Not your real one, just something you like. You pause, then say, Lark. It slips out easily. You're not sure where it comes from, but it feels right. He nods. Lark, then. He doesn't ask for your body. He asks for a story. So you make one up. A tale of a Mesopotamian girl, born in the marshes of Eridu, raised among reeds and birdsong. She becomes a temple scribe, forbidden to speak her thoughts aloud. But she writes them anyway, in tiny cuneiform script tucked beneath incense boxes and sacrificial tablets. She had a lover? He asks softly. No, you say, but she loved someone. He smiles. That's harder. You let silence bloom between you, warm and full. Historians still argue whether the temple scribes in Mesopotamia were allowed romantic lives. Some say they were kept isolated for purity. Others believe the act of writing itself, committing thought to clay, was a form of devotion. You think about that girl often now. Wonder if she would have liked you or pitied you. After the man leaves, you remain sitting on the bed, fingers curled into the blanket. You feel a little unraveled, not harmed, just slightly less assembled. You return to the parlor. Florence is asleep in a chair, charcoal still in her hand. Maggie's quietly reading the detective novel again, mouth forming the words in the flicker of candlelight. You pick up your notebook and write, Rule number 19. If a name brings you peace, keep it, even if it's not the one you were born with. Later that night, you stare at the sketch on your wall and whisper the name to yourself, Lark. Not because you believe it, but because, for now, it believes in you. You don't expect the letter. It comes folded 3 times, sealed in plain wax, slipped under the madam's office door before breakfast. No return address, no crest, just your name, written in a hand that's too careful to be natural. You stare at it over tea, not touching. Maggie raises an eyebrow. Florence glances between you and it. No one says a word, but the letter holds the center of gravity in the room. You open it slowly, as if the paper might bite. The handwriting inside is neat, formal. A man's, you think. Maybe his. Thank you, Lark, for letting the silence be enough. You reminded me I was still human. Enclosed is a small favor. Not out of pity, but recognition. Use it however you choose. Burn this when you're done. At the bottom, no name. Just a pressed violet, perfectly dry. Tucked inside is a banknote. You exhale. Not because of the money, though that alone could pay rent for a month, but because something about the letter feels realer than anything else in your day. Like it happened outside the dream of this house. You fold the note and slide it into the lining of your coat. You'll decide later what to do with it. The violet you press into your rule book, between rule number 12 and number 13. That evening, the madam says nothing. But she watches you more closely than usual. Her eyes follow your steps like a cat deciding whether you still belong. Florence pulls you aside in the hallway. Was it from him? She whispers. You nod. Her mouth opens like she's about to ask something important, but then she says, "Do you think he'll come back?" You shake your head. "No, and I don't think he's meant to." That night, you do your shift. No guests ask for you, and you don't mind. You scrub the floorboards, help Maggie patch a petticoat, share a candle with Josie so she can pluck out another sad, warbling tune. The note never leaves your pocket. Some Mesopotamian brothel tokens, clay coins exchanged for services, have been found with inscriptions. Names, prayers, even tiny poetry. One was shaped like a woman's eye, surrounded by stars. Scholars argue whether these were transactions or tributes, gifts or apologies. You think about that now. As the letter whispers in your coat lining, you write a new rule in your notebook. Rule number 20. Not all exits are doors. Some are paper, some are names. The fire is burning low. Florence is sketching again. You look over her shoulder. It's a cityscape this time. Rooftops. A silhouette on a balcony. A single bird in the sky. "Is that me?" you ask, gesturing at the figure. She shrugs. "Could be." You smile. You don't need it to be. Later, you lie in bed, eyes open, the ceiling familiar now. Each crack, each stain, a friend you've memorized. You trace your thoughts gently, like fingers over braille. The girls downstairs, the letter, the pressed flower, the name that doesn't belong to you but fits anyway. You wonder what tomorrow will bring. And for the first time in a long while, the thought doesn't make your chest tighten. And now, the lamps are low, the footsteps faded, the city has softened into hush. You lie still beneath your quilt, listening to the slow, pulsing breath of the house, pipes settling, wood creaking, someone sighing in a room not far from yours. Outside, the rain has returned. Not angry, not hurried, just gentle. Like a lullaby on the rooftops. You shift once beneath the covers, your legs warm now, your toes no longer curled from cold. The hearth glows dim, casting gold shapes on the wall. They flicker, stretch, and disappear, like memories you don't need to keep anymore. The notebook lies near, closed, but close. Its pages heavier now with your words, your rules, your truths. Down the hall, Florence has stopped sketching. Maggie's laugh was the last sound of the evening, fading into a quiet too soft to chase. And you? You breathe in. You feel the weight of your limbs, the gentle rhythm of rest, waiting at the edges of your thoughts. You are tired, but not the kind of tired that breaks, the kind that says you've made it through. Tonight, you will not dream of clients, not of rules, not of names you were forced to wear. You will dream of wind through reeds, of ink pressed into clay, of a small violet tucked into a hand that meant no harm. And maybe, just maybe, you will wake tomorrow not needing the name Lark anymore. Or maybe you'll keep it just a little while longer. For now, let the rain be your lullaby. Let the quiet wrap you like a story that asks for nothing in return. And let this moment be your softest one yet. End of script. Sweet dreams.